See, and okay, so that's a really good thing. I know Chris is pro level squish, but I'm not. I get it from the pressure of joining into the game. So the idea of that WoW's level squish made it less intimidating for me to join, but WoW's I think has a bigger new player problem than their remake. So I think a lot of like his view from a veteran perspective is like, oh, this is great. This makes it so much easier to get into. I came into it, it's like I'm just not connected, and that could also be a me personal thing, but note at its core, the level squish, if they did that in 14, I would feel robbed. Even if like I get the financial benefit, I get the inbound. I think if they ever did a level squish in 14, I don't think I'd be pro for it. Like I get the long health of the game, but I think at that point, like where in 14 has endwalker, I would think that if they were ever going to do a level squish, I think that becomes with a whole new system, a whole new journey. Like, yes, maybe your character's connected, but there should be some kind of archival of this system, right? So that where 2.0 through 6.0 or 6 point whatever, is like its own system. And then from there, within that contained world, you can always go to, we're not taking your levels away. But instead of that, let's say, like, what would it look like to say, hey, what if we jumped 1,000 years into the future? What would it look like if we jumped 100 years or 50 years? Like, okay, hey, new system, like it gives them a lot more freedom. So I think ultimately the level squish was an idea that I don't like it. I just don't. The stat squish makes complete sense to me. Like the stat squish is like that's good, that's healthy, that makes sense. The level squish, I would be like, what? My levels? But so it's not. There's no easy answer. I mean, what would you guys think? Would you guys want to see something like that? Yeah. So for those who don't know, a level squish would be literally about reducing the max level and saying, hey, the max level is now 60. If you're a level 90, you'll now be level 40 or level 50. And then you would just be like, okay, like the new level is and the new level cap is 60. And then every expansion, the level cap is 60. And then you just gain your 10 levels. And I don't like, what's going to be really interesting to see with that system and that as an idea is how does 10.0 manage it? If 10.0 for WoW comes out, I mean, let's say it's a good game. Let's say it's a good game. Microsoft's like, we're about to take, I guess 10.0 would be before the takeover. We're about to acquire them, blah, blah, blah. And wow, this is great. WoW's back to its, its wonderfulness. And oh yeah, that level squish is such a really good idea. How's it going to feel for everybody just gaining the same 10 levels over and over and over again? It feels, but feels very like, I don't know. It feels short-sighted, but I could be wrong. Like I could be wrong. Mentally, it could be just like, yeah, this is something that always makes it easier for people to come in and join. 14, I don't think actually has a leveling problem. It has an MSQ problem. And there's a big difference. So leveling and MSQ. And so you end up having a couple of things going on here. First and foremost, the leveling problem tends to be that, in a game where it doesn't necessarily have, you're not gated by story, you're gated by level. To get to the content, the end game, it's all about trying to get to the level faster. Now, WoW has backtracked a little bit and changed it up so that you had to kind of do the story, much like 14. 14's always been MSQ gated. So just rolling back the levels, like, I wouldn't be for it. I think it ultimately would it'd make everything else kind of feel weak, especially when you talk about previous expansions kind of being designed around that 10 level range. MSQ gating is the kind of equivalent. So you have to play through the story. So if you don't want to play through the story, tough luck. You have to play through the story if you want to get into the end game experience. And I think that whole philosophy is a little bit kind of twisted. And I think that's twisted because of just how WoW really cemented itself that the real game happens at level cap, as opposed to the journey and the destination. The journey is also a part of that, that destination mindset. So you take that aspect, and that's where it's like outside of the leveling alone, at some point we know for a fact that, do you sit here and say, hey, you got to play 3,000 hours of a game before you can actually get into the advertised end game? One of two things will happen, I think, is that first and foremost, you end up having a community that gets retrained so that they're not like, it's not always about the end of the game. But Then the other side of it is that you have a game that essentially gets top heavy, that it becomes a journey of like, there's no way that anybody is going to come play, 30 seasons of Final Fantasy XIV just to experience it. So at some point, to roll back a level squish wouldn't necessarily foundationally make sense, because you still have that MSQ, and the only other way to do it is to say to skip or to have a new starting point.